Ben Franklin effect. What if I told you that by doing someone a favor, you could trick your brain into liking them more? Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what Benjamin Franklin discovered, an idea that flips everything you thought you knew about human relationships on its head. Let's break it down. Imagine this. You're forced to do something kind for someone you don't like. You grumble, you resist, but you do it anyway. What happens next? Instead of resenting them more, you end up liking them more. It doesn't make sense, does it? This is where the Ben Franklin effect comes into play. It's not some mystical trick. It's simple psychology. You might think you help people because you like them. But in reality, your brain tells a different story. When you do someone a favor, your brain works overtime to justify your action. It convinces you that you must like them, because why would you go out of your way for someone you despise? The more you convince yourself you did it out of kindness, the more your mind bends to the idea that you care about them. So why does this happen? Because our brains hate inconsistency. If you do something nice for someone, but feel resentment towards them, your brain has to reconcile that contradiction. It chooses the simplest solution. You must like them, or else why would you act so kindly? It's a subtle mind game, but it's incredibly powerful. And here's the kicker. This effect doesn't just work on people you don't like. It can be used on anyone. You want to build rapport with someone quickly. Help them out. It could be something small, a favor, a gesture, and before you know it, you'll find yourself seeing them in a new light. But the Ben Franklin effect isn't just about personal relationships. It's everywhere, in politics, businesses, even in the media. Think about how companies market their products. They give you something for free, make you feel like you owe them a favor, and boom, you start liking their brand more. The power of reciprocity is used against you, but you never even see it coming. It's a delicate manipulation, a subtle shift in the narrative, one where your brain slowly betrays you. And the most unsettling part? You're complicit in it. You've done this yourself. You've helped someone and found yourself starting to like them when, deep down, you never intended to. And here's the terrifying truth. The more you do this, the less control you have over your emotions. They slip away from reason, slipping into the web of psychological tricks that the world weaves around you. The more favors you do, the more your brain tells you that you're building genuine connections. But maybe, just maybe, that's not the case. Maybe the connections you think you're building are nothing more than a result of a psychological illusion, a carefully crafted manipulation. So, the next time you do something nice for someone, ask yourself, am I helping them, or am I just helping myself to an illusion that I'm in control? Intermittent reinforcement. Imagine this. You're desperately trying to quit a bad habit, like smoking, and for days, weeks even, you feel like you're winning. You're strong. You're in control. But then, just when you least expect it, you slip. You light up again, and for a brief moment, the weight of your stress, your worries, the cravings, all melt away. You feel good. Then the cycle begins again. You know it's bad for you, but somehow you keep going back. This isn't weakness. It's a psychological trap, a trap known as intermittent reinforcement. At its core, intermittent reinforcement is the unpredictable cycle of rewards and punishments that keep you hooked. Think of it as the psychological version of gambling. It's not about getting rewarded every time. It's about those rare, unexpected moments when you do get a reward. Those moments keep you coming back for more, It's like playing a slot machine. You don't win every time, but when you do, it feels electrifying. The possibility of a reward and the rush when it finally comes triggers something deep inside us, a primal drive that says, try again. So what is intermittent reinforcement really? It's a manipulation of the human brain's reward system, designed to make us chase that elusive payoff. The truth is, it's everywhere, from social media notifications to video games, from relationships to habits. Consider this. In 1974, a man named B.F. Skinner, a psychologist, conducted an experiment with pigeons. He placed them in a box with a button to peck, and a food pellet would occasionally be dispensed as a reward. The pigeons didn't get food every time they pecked the button. Sometimes they got a reward. Sometimes they didn't. But here's the kicker. Those pigeons went absolutely crazy. They pecked the button over and over, convinced that if they just kept doing it, they'd get rewarded again. The result, the intermittent nature of the reward, made them more obsessed, more driven, than if they had been rewarded consistently. This is the essence of intermittent reinforcement. It doesn't just satisfy you, it hooks you. This same principle plays out in our daily lives. In relationships, one partner might withhold affection or approval, giving it out sparingly. It creates a sense of uncertainty, but also deep desire. In marketing, advertisers use intermittent reinforcement to keep us engaged with products. You get an email saying, "You've been selected for a special offer." You don't get one every time, but every now and then, when you do, it's hard to resist. Every time that email arrives, it's like hitting a jackpot. So how does it work exactly? It's a process that plays on our natural instincts. First, there's the build-up. You experience frustration, a desire for something you don't have. This builds tension in your brain, a craving. Then the reward arrives, though not always when you expect it. It's unpredictable. The inconsistency of the reward fuels the anticipation. It's like being teased with a promise of something better, something you're convinced you deserve. The brain's dopamine system, responsible for pleasure, goes wild. Dopamine is the same chemical released when we do something pleasurable, like eating or getting a like on a post. It's the brain's way of telling you that felt good. Do it again. But here's the trick. The unpredictable nature of the reward makes the craving stronger, not weaker. If you received the reward every time, you'd get bored. The excitement would fade. But because you don't know when the reward will come, you continue trying, pushing, hoping. And that's what makes you vulnerable. The danger is subtle. Intermittent reinforcement doesn't feel manipulative because, on the surface, it looks like a game you can control. It's not a simple addiction. It's a gradual pull, one that twists your thoughts, makes you second-guess your decisions, and even reshapes your sense of self-worth. Why does it work? Because of the way our brains are wired. We thrive on predictability, but the unpredictability of intermittent reinforcement taps into our deepest desires: control, novelty, and validation. The moment we feel we're in control, we believe we have the power to win. Yet, in reality, we're playing a game where the odds are always stacked against us. Now, the frightening truth. Most people never see it coming. We can be in a toxic relationship or stuck in a never-ending loop of online shopping or social media scrolling, convinced that this time it will be different, that this time the payoff will be worth it. But the cycle is designed to make us chase after something that can never truly satisfy us. The reward isn't about the prize itself, it's about the chase, and that's what keeps us trapped. So how do you protect yourself from falling into this trap? The first step is awareness. Recognize when you're being manipulated by an unpredictable reward system. Notice how you feel when you don't get what you want, how that craving grows. But more importantly, challenge yourself to break the cycle. It's hard, but small steps, setting boundaries, practicing self-control, and learning to be okay with the absence of a reward can start to weaken the hold it has on you. Ultimately, the key is to understand that true satisfaction doesn't come from chasing the next reward. It comes from knowing when to walk away. Covert contracts. Imagine this. You've just helped someone with a favor. Nothing too big, just a simple gesture, something you're happy to do. But as the days pass, you start to notice something strange. Every time you're in need of help, that person is nowhere to be found. You feel like they owe you something, but they don't seem to acknowledge it. The worst part? You can't quite pinpoint when the shift happened, but the unease is there. There's a silent agreement that never materialized. This is the essence of a covert contract, an unspoken, hidden agreement that sets you up for disappointment, resentment, and sometimes emotional turmoil. Covert contracts are like invisible strings that tie people together without their full awareness. They're promises made without a word being spoken, expectations that someone will reciprocate your kindness or even love without explicitly stating it. In its simplest form, a covert contract is a one-sided deal you create in your own mind, where you do something for someone with the unspoken expectation that they'll owe you something in return. But the catch is, you never express these expectations. Instead, you act as if the other person should know, and when they inevitably fail to meet those expectations, the resentment builds, often without either party even knowing why. Now let's break this down. Why does this work in the first place? The mechanism behind covert contracts lies deeply rooted in the way our brains are wired for reciprocity and fairness. We're all driven by a desire to feel appreciated and valued. It's the same principle that explains why we go out of our way for others or offer assistance, expecting it to be returned in some way. Our brain rewards us with dopamine when we help others or when others help us in return. The issue, however, arises when we engage in these exchanges with unspoken terms. The brain starts to latch onto the idea that if we help someone, they should return the favor. But when that return doesn't come, it throws our mental equilibrium out of balance. We feel cheated, confused, and frustrated, all because the agreement was never made explicit. Let's take a concrete example. Picture a friendship where one person is always there, listening to the other's problems, offering advice, and putting in time and effort. But when it's their turn, the favor is never returned. The friend becomes busy, distant, or distracted. Yet, the person who helped is left stewing in the background, silently waiting for a similar gesture. When nothing comes, the resentment starts to bubble up. The person who has been giving starts to feel that they've been used, but they've never actually asked for anything in return. The friend, on the other hand, has no idea that they're being held accountable for something they never agreed to. Both parties are trapped in a silent game, one bound by invisible expectations. Now, let's widen the lens. Covert contracts are also rampant in romantic relationships, particularly when someone assumes that love should naturally be reciprocated in equal measure. Think about a partner who constantly showers the other with gifts, time or affection, all while expecting the same level of commitment or reciprocation in return. The trouble arises when these expectations are never verbalized. One partner might assume they are being supportive and generous, while the other partner has no clue they're supposed to be matching the effort. Over time, the person doing all the giving starts to feel unappreciated, and resentment builds. The relationship suffers because there was no explicit conversation about the expectations or needs, only the silent assumption that love, in any form, should come with reciprocal actions. But here's the twist. This is where it gets insidious. The moment when you realize something isn't right, it's already too late. You've invested so much time, energy, or emotion into this covert contract that breaking free feels impossible. The realization hits. The agreement was never real, and yet you've been holding on to it, hoping, waiting for the other person to meet your unspoken needs. But because the contract was covert, hidden in your mind and never explicitly shared, you've set yourself up for inevitable disappointment. Psychologically speaking, covert contracts exploit the brain's vulnerability to confirmation bias. We want to believe that our expectations will be met, even if they were never communicated. When the expected return doesn't come, our brain struggles to make sense of the imbalance. It feeds us stories, justifications, and what-ifs that only deepen the sense of betrayal. You start to blame yourself. Maybe I didn't do enough. Or maybe I didn't show them how much I cared. It's an emotional trap that keeps you tethered to a situation that isn't serving you, and as time goes on, the cycle becomes harder to break. Each time the covert contract goes unmet, your brain gets a little more entrenched in the disappointment, heightening the emotional investment. But the true danger of covert contracts isn't just about the resentment they breed. It's about the toll they take on your self-worth. The longer you stay stuck in this silent expectation game, the more you start questioning your value. Are you not worth the return? Did you somehow misjudge the situation? In reality, you were never meant to be in this cycle in the first place. A healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship, romantic, or familial, thrives on open, honest communication about needs, wants, and expectations. Covert contracts strip you of that clarity. Here's the harsh reality. The only way out of a covert contract is to break the silence. You must stop assuming that people know what you want or need. You must own your expectations and express them clearly. It's uncomfortable at first, but it's the only way to stop the cycle of emotional manipulation, resentment, and disappointment. The longer you let these invisible contracts linger, the more they erode your sense of self and your relationships. So the next time you catch yourself silently waiting for someone to meet an unspoken need, remember this: no one can read your mind, and no one is obligated to fulfill your invisible contract. Speak up, set clear expectations, and reclaim your peace. Reverse psychology, inversion. There's a way to make someone do exactly what you want. No threats, no manipulation, no force. Just the power of suggestion. So subtle, so smooth, you won't even see it coming. It's called reverse psychology. And when it's done right, it's not just clever, it's dangerous. Imagine this. You're dealing with someone who won't listen. Maybe it's a partner, a friend, or even a child. They're stubborn, defiant, and no matter how many times you explain your point, they just don't get it. So you do the unexpected. You tell them to do the opposite of what you want. You say, "You probably won't be able to finish that project by tomorrow," or "I bet you can't resist the urge to argue with me on this." It sounds harmless, right? It's not. You've just planted the seed of defiance, the seed that will make them want to prove you wrong. And when they do, they think they're winning. They think they've outsmarted you. But in reality, they're just doing exactly what you wanted all along. It's a dance, this game. Reverse psychology isn't about tricking someone. It's about flipping their mind. You don't force them to do something. They do it out of their own desire to defy your expectations. It's manipulation without a single raised voice. But here's the catch. The more you play this game, the more you blur the lines. What starts as a small push becomes a habit. Soon, they don't even realize they're being controlled. Picture this, a partner who constantly dismisses your opinions. You get tired of fighting. So instead of confronting them head-on, you subtly suggest that their point of view is the one that's flawed. Sure, go ahead. I'm sure you'll figure it out, you say. What happens next? They dig in. They start justifying their decisions, proving you right, all on their own. But in their mind, they're not being manipulated. They're taking control. It gets worse. The more you use this tactic, the more it starts to shift from external influence to something far more insidious. They begin to question themselves less, and the manipulation becomes internal. You've turned the table so many times that they now second-guess every decision they make. Is this who they really are? Or are they just doing what you want? They don't even know anymore. The psychological danger here. It's insidious. This tactic doesn't just control actions. It undermines the core of their self-esteem. They begin to doubt themselves. They start losing confidence in their own judgments, relying more and more on others to make decisions. They're trapped in a cycle of needing to prove themselves, and the more they try, the deeper they go. Think about it. Cult leaders use this. They twist your mind until you believe their reality is the only truth. Toxic relationships thrive on this. Friends, partners, they tell you one thing, but then they manipulate you into doing the opposite. You think you're free, but you're not. You've been led by your own desire to prove them wrong, and in doing so, you've given them control over your every move. But there is a way out. The first step is awareness. Recognize when you're being played. Don't let their words twist your sense of self. Question everything. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who benefits from this decision? When you reclaim that power, you regain control. Reverse psychology loses its grip. You stop playing the game and start living on your own terms. So, next time someone tries to flip your world upside down with their suggestions, take a step back. See the manipulation for what it is. Don't let them control you with a simple reversal of logic. You're stronger than that. You're smarter than that. The real power is in knowing when not to play the game at all. Gaslighting by omission. What if the most dangerous lies are the ones left unsaid? What if the truth is hidden, not in what's spoken, but in what's deliberately left out? Gaslighting isn't just about twisting words or manipulating facts. It's about creating a world where your perception of reality bends and breaks, often without a word being spoken. The silence, the absence of truth, is just as destructive as the lies themselves. You might think gaslighting only comes from direct, obvious attacks on your sanity, those accusations that make you doubt yourself. But what if the most insidious form of control comes from withholding the very pieces of information you need to make sense of your world? It starts innocently enough. A relationship, a situation, a conversation. Everything seems fine. But gradually, you begin to feel a sense of disconnection, as if there's something missing, a story half told, a detail that's skipped over, ignored. The pauses between words become more deliberate, the silences more pronounced. You question yourself. Was there something I missed? Was I not paying attention? Was I imagining things? This is gaslighting by omission, the art of making you feel crazy by simply leaving out the crucial details. You're left with half-truths, fragments, gaps where answers should be, and in those spaces, doubt takes root. They don't have to tell you you're wrong. They don't need to force the truth into your mind. All they need to do is keep you in the dark, where the absence of knowledge becomes the weapon. But why is this so effective? It's because human beings rely on connection to form their understanding of the world. Our sense of reality is built on the exchange of information. When you're denied that exchange, something deeper happens. Your trust in your own perceptions begins to unravel. You start doubting not only the person withholding the information, but also your ability to trust yourself. You wonder, did I hear that right? Did they say something? What's going on that I don't know? The truth you once took for granted slips away, and you're left grasping at shadows. This form of manipulation is subtle. It's not loud. It doesn't scream in your face. Instead, it whispers from the corners of your mind, leaving you unsure, unsettled. It's a strategy that operates in the spaces between what is said and what is not said. A word left unsaid here, a detail ignored there. And over time, the pattern becomes clear. You are no longer in control of your own perception. Someone else is, but you don't know who or why. Think about the workplace. A colleague might withhold vital information about an upcoming project, not to sabotage you directly, but to ensure that you fail, to leave you scrambling for answers they know you won't find. Or perhaps in a relationship, your partner omits details about their plans, leaving you wondering where they've gone or why they've been distant. You're not told outright, but you're left with the gnawing feeling that something isn't right. And you, in your search for clarity, start questioning everything: your trust, your instincts, your own thoughts. This isn't a rare occurrence. It happens every day, in the smallest of ways. Leaders do it to their followers, friends to friends, even parents to children. Gaslighting by omission is the secret tactic of control, and it doesn't require a manipulative mastermind to work. It simply requires the silence to fester. Consider the case of historical manipulation, when leaders have used omissions to shape entire societies. During times of war, propaganda isn't always about what's said. It's about what's left out. The truth of a nation's atrocities, the realities of a war's devastation, are often buried beneath layers of half-truths, leaving the public in the dark. The omissions are so systematic, so carefully placed, that the people don't realize they're being misled until it's too late. By the time the full truth comes out, the damage is already done. Trust is shattered, lives are lost, and the real story is buried deep beneath the lies of omission. But gaslighting by omission doesn't just affect the public. It destroys the individual. It warps your reality until your identity is shaped by what you don't know. The longer you live in the void of unspoken truths, the more you become unmoored. And in the absence of the truth, your mind searches for explanations. The void fills itself, but the truth you build is never the right one. You become lost, a shadow of your former self, unable to discern what is real anymore. So what can be done? How do you fight something so elusive, so silent, so invisible? The answer lies in recognizing the silence for what it is. Not an accident, not an oversight, but a tool, a weapon. You must learn to trust the full picture, to demand the truth in its entirety, not just the parts others want you to hear. But this is no easy task. To see the truth, you must first be willing to confront the uncomfortable question, what am I not being told? Because in the end, it's the omissions that may define your reality. And the scariest part? You may never see them coming. Love bombing. What if love, the one thing we believe to be the most genuine in the world, could actually be a weapon? What if the person who promised you the world was just playing a game, slowly reprogramming your sense of reality? You've felt it, haven't you? The whirlwind of affection, the overwhelming messages, the constant reassurance that you're the one. It feels like a dream come true. But here's the twist. This intensity, this flood of emotions, isn't born from love. It's a strategy. It's called love bombing. Maybe you've dismissed the warning signs. Maybe it felt too good to question. Who wouldn't want to be adored, swept off their feet, treated like the center of someone's universe? But love bombing is nothing more than manipulation in disguise. It begins with kindness, affection, and validation, but it's a trap. It doesn't build connection. It builds dependence. It's the illusion of love wrapped in promises, but designed to create control. Think about it. 1 minute, they're telling you that you're everything they've ever wanted. The next, they're withdrawing, leaving you confused, questioning if maybe you've done something wrong. But the key is in the sudden bursts of affection, the exaggerated gestures. It's like being in a storm where, just when you think it's over, the winds pick up again, faster, stronger. The first step is always the same: idealization. They shower you with attention, make you feel special, but only in ways that make you reliant on their approval. You're perfect. I've never met anyone like you. All the while, you're unknowingly being trained to seek their validation, to crave their affection like an addict craving a hit. The more you want it, the more you chase it. And then comes the switch. The love they gave you in droves begins to dwindle, the messages slow, the affection cools, the compliments turn into criticisms. Suddenly you find yourself doubting everything. What did I do wrong? Why don't they care anymore? And here's where it gets truly insidious. You chase the highs, their affection, their approval, doing anything to feel that rush again. But they hold all the cards now. They've made you dependent, and you've walked right into their trap. Love bombing isn't just a personal manipulation. It's everywhere. It's in toxic relationships, yes, but it also creeps into the ways we interact with the world. Think about politics, social media influencers, or even businesses that sell us a dream. They make us feel seen, heard, important, but it's all part of the same game. It's about control, about making us want more, about making us believe we need what they're selling. And as the cycle continues, the question remains, why don't we see it coming? Why do we keep falling for it? Because deep down, we all want to be loved. We crave it so much that we allow ourselves to be manipulated by the very thing we seek most. But here's the haunting truth. You might never see love for what it truly is until it's too late. And even then, when the storm passes, you'll be left wondering how you could have been so blind to the damage love bombing causes. Maybe the hardest part isn't realizing you've been manipulated. Maybe the hardest part is forgiving yourself for allowing it to happen. Push-pull. Disqualification. Imagine this. You're drawn to someone. You can't help it. They give you just enough to keep you interested. Just enough attention to make you feel seen. But it's never quite enough. There's always a wall. Always something holding them back, keeping you on your toes. They pull you in, only to push you away, over and over. You chase, you question, you long. But you don't know what you're chasing, because they never quite give you what you need. It's a dance, a game, a manipulation, and the most disturbing part, you're complicit. This is the push-pull dynamic, a subtle form of emotional manipulation that thrives on disqualification. You think you know what it is, but do you truly understand how it works? How you can fall for it, not once, but again and again? It's simple, yet insidious, a tug-of-war over your attention and feelings, and it's often so gradual you barely notice it until you're completely entangled. It starts with a promise, a gesture, a smile, a word of encouragement. In the beginning, it feels like they're giving you something you've always wanted. Attention, affection, connection. Maybe it's in a relationship. Maybe it's in the workplace, or even with a friend. They give you enough to make you believe you're the one. You're special. You're different. But then, just as you start to feel comfortable, to let your guard down, the shift happens. They pull away. They stop texting. They become distant. They ignore your calls, but only for a moment. The absence is just long enough to make you wonder if they really care. And that wonder pulls you back in. It's not a random occurrence. This is a pattern, a manipulative tactic that's been used for centuries. One of the most chilling historical examples of this manipulation can be traced back to the infamous behavior of cult leaders. Take Jim Jones, for example. He was a master of the push-pull technique, making his followers feel loved and safe, only to push them away in moments of doubt or rebellion. When they questioned him, he withdrew. And the more he withdrew, the more they sought him. They believed that if they could just prove their loyalty, prove their commitment, they'd receive the love and attention they so desperately craved. They never got it, not in a way that lasted. It was always just out of reach. And that's what kept them hooked. The mechanism behind push-pull is deceptively simple. It starts with an emotional hook, a connection. They get close, they get intimate. You start to trust them, to feel like you belong. Then, at the peak of your emotional investment, they pull away. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that keeps people addicted to slot machines. You never know when the next reward will come, but the anticipation, the longing, the desire for that next payoff, it's enough to keep you playing, keep you chasing, keep you hoping. And then, when the pull becomes too much, when you start to pull back yourself, they push you. They come back with a flood of attention, a promise of closeness. "I've missed you," they say. "I was just busy." I don't want to lose you. You fall for it. You always do. But here's the key, the real trick. You never know when they'll pull away again. And the next time they push, you're already conditioned. You're waiting for it. You're craving it. This pattern is terrifying in its subtlety. It works because it doesn't feel malicious at first. It feels like care, like love, like validation. But the more it happens, the more you become dependent on their approval, their affection. And that dependency, that need, is what gives them power over you. They don't need to force you to stay. They only need to create the illusion of closeness and then withhold it. That's the push-pull. That's the disqualification. But here's the truth no one tells you. This manipulation doesn't happen in an instant. It happens over time, often in small, imperceptible ways. Each push makes you want them more. Each pull makes you question your worth. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've already internalized it. You start to believe that the problem lies with you. Maybe I'm too clingy, you think. Maybe I overreact. You're convinced that if you just try harder, just love more, they'll finally give you what you've been searching for. But you'll never get it. Not in the way you need. And that's the most dangerous part, the realization that it's not you, it's the dynamic, it's the game they're playing, and you're trapped in it. So, how do you protect yourself? How do you break free? The first step is awareness. Recognize the pattern when it starts. Don't mistake the emotional highs and lows for genuine affection. Pay attention to the ebb and flow of their attention. When they pull away, take a step back and ask yourself why you feel the need to chase them. Recognize that their affection, their validation, is not something you should need to earn or fight for. You're worth more than the scraps they offer. And finally, remember this. True connection doesn't operate on a push-pull basis. It's not a game, and it doesn't keep you guessing. If you find yourself constantly wondering where you stand, constantly seeking approval or reassurance, then you're not in a healthy relationship. It's time to pull away for good. Forced teaming. Imagine this. You're walking into a meeting, ready to face a new challenge at work. The project is high stakes, and you know the pressure is on. But then a colleague, one you barely know, flashes you a smile. "We're in this together," they say, their voice warm, reassuring. They make you feel like you're part of a team, that you share a common goal. They talk about we and us, framing you as partners in a fight, and you nod, relieved to be in good company. But as the days go by, you realize something unsettling. The closer you look, the more you notice that every task you're in it together for falls squarely on your shoulders. And that smile, once so comforting, now feels a little too calculated. What's happening here is something called forced teaming, a psychological manipulation tactic often used in professional settings, friendships, and even in toxic relationships. It's when someone pulls you into their world, making you feel like a team, only to subtly shift the responsibility and control onto you without your full awareness. It feels like an alliance at first, but it's really a trap that leaves you isolated, confused, and drained. So how does this subtle manipulation work? It begins with false camaraderie. The manipulator creates a connection that doesn't truly exist. They pull you in with shared language, words like we, us, and together, that make you feel bonded. They may act like they have your best interests at heart, pushing you to believe that you're working towards a mutual goal. Psychologically, this taps into the human need for belonging. We are wired to seek out groups, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. It's a deeply ingrained need for social validation and emotional connection. The manipulator exploits this by creating a false sense of unity. It feels good at first, like you're not alone in the world. But that's the hook. The problem is, this forced teaming isn't really about partnership. It's about control. The manipulator wants something from you. And once you're emotionally invested, the dynamic shifts. The illusion of teamwork begins to unravel. You find yourself doing the heavy lifting, meeting deadlines alone, or picking up the slack for someone who never really had your back. Meanwhile, the manipulator keeps up the act of shared responsibility, ensuring you feel the pressure of the team without ever receiving support. Imagine a scenario where a colleague asks for your help on a project, framing it as a joint effort. At first, they seem genuinely grateful, and you're flattered to be included. But over time, you realize you're doing all the work while they breeze through their tasks. They continue to use inclusive language. We need to finish this. We can't let this fail. But never follow through. Slowly you start to question why you're doing everything, but the manipulator keeps reinforcing that it's our responsibility, leaving you feeling guilty if you push back. And by the time you realize the manipulation, it's already too late. You've become the go-to person, always picking up the pieces, always shouldering the burden, yet never receiving the recognition you deserve. This manipulation works because of intermittent reinforcement, the psychological principle that works like a slot machine. Just when you start to back off, the manipulator throws you a bone. Maybe they say, "I couldn't have done this without you," or "We'll get this done together." Those little words reinforce your emotional attachment to the idea of us, even though it's all one-sided. It's an emotional roller coaster that keeps you stuck in the cycle, chasing validation you'll rarely get. At the core of forced teaming lies cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable tension between what you feel should be happening, a true partnership, and what's really going on. You're being used. Your brain wants to resolve that tension, so it convinces you to ignore the red flags, to justify their actions. You keep thinking, maybe if I do more, they'll help more next time. Or it's just a phase. But the phase never ends, and you're left stuck in a loop, trying to please someone who's never going to reciprocate. This doesn't just happen in the workplace. It can creep into personal relationships too. A manipulative partner may create a sense of unity in the relationship, making you feel like you're in it together. They might even praise your commitment to the team, all while dodging responsibility for their own actions. And by the time you catch on, the emotional and psychological toll is already too heavy. What makes forced teaming so dangerous is that it preys on our desire for connection, our need to be seen and valued. The trap is that you don't realize you're being manipulated until it's too late. You've invested too much, emotionally and mentally, and backing out feels like betraying someone you thought was your ally. The manipulator knows this. They know that once you're hooked, you'll keep justifying their behavior, convincing yourself that the relationship or the team effort is worth saving, even if it's draining you. So what can you do? The first step is recognizing it. Watch for the signs of unequal effort. If you're constantly told that we are a team, but the work only falls on you, it's a red flag. A true partnership is balanced, with both parties contributing equally. Acknowledge your worth and the effort you're putting in. You're not here to be someone's emotional or professional pawn. Remember, you deserve to be in relationships, personal, professional, or otherwise, where the effort is mutual. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Don't let them make you feel like you're part of a team when you're really just a cog in their manipulation machine. Future faking. There's a way to make someone believe in their future without ever promising a single thing. It's a quiet trick, one that creeps in like a shadow, wrapping itself around the truth. It's called reverse future faking, and it doesn't look like manipulation at first. It feels like hope. Imagine this. You meet someone who promises a future with you. They don't just talk about tomorrow. They talk about years from now. They paint a picture, a life you can almost touch. You start to believe in it. You start to plan for it. You tell yourself that soon things will get better. But here's the catch. They never promised it. Not really. They've only set you up for a future that they know will never come. Reverse future faking isn't about empty promises. It's about dangling a future you want, making you chase it, and then pulling it away. It works like this. They tell you what they could offer, what they might give you, what's just around the corner. It's vague, but it's enough to make you cling to the idea. And you don't realize it's all a lie until you're already invested. The promise isn't real. It's just a lure. Think about it. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone said, "I'll change, just give it time"? Or maybe, "In a year, things will be better. I swear." But that year never comes. And even when you're caught in a cycle of disappointment, they don't need to say anything more. The mere suggestion of a future is enough to keep you waiting. It's not a promise. It's just a faint hope, one that makes you doubt your own judgment, your own reality. It starts small, a suggestion, a soft whisper about what could be. We'll go on that trip when things settle. When I get that promotion, we'll finally be together. These aren't promises. They're just enough to make you believe. You tell yourself, maybe next month, next year, maybe when I'm more patient. And it keeps you going. But what happens when you start waiting? What happens when that hope grows into a need? That's when the manipulation deepens, because now it's not just about waiting, it's about questioning your own worth. Why aren't they changing? Why hasn't that future come yet? Maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're just not trying hard enough. So you push harder, you sacrifice more, and still nothing changes. The goalposts just move farther away, but you keep running after them, hoping that this time things will be different. Sound familiar? Maybe you've been in a relationship where every time you brought up the future, the person said, "You're not ready for that yet. We need to wait." Or how about the friend who promises to meet up, but only talks about it when they need something? They keep the future out of reach, just enough to keep you hooked, but never enough to satisfy. And the worst part? Over time, you stop just waiting. You start to doubt yourself. Was it your fault? Did you not try hard enough? You begin to wonder if you are the reason that future isn't happening. And that's when reverse future faking does its most sinister damage. It doesn't just keep you stuck in a cycle. It changes how you see yourself. This manipulation wears away at your self-worth, your agency. It gets so deep, you don't even know what's real anymore. You start to internalize the lies. You stop believing you deserve anything else. You stay, even when you know you should leave. The idea of what could be becomes more important than what actually is. But here's the hard truth. You're not the problem. You've just been tricked into thinking you are. Recognizing reverse future faking is the first step. It's about spotting that little voice that says, "Maybe next time." It's about understanding that anyone who dangles the future in front of you, but never gives you a concrete plan, is playing a game. And you're not a pawn. You deserve more than empty promises. You deserve a future that's built on the present, not on illusions. Break free from the cycle. When you see the signs of reverse future faking, don't fall for it. Walk away. Recognize your own worth, and remember, your future isn't something to be handed to you. It's something you can build on your own. Don't wait for it. Create it. Tactical ignorance. What if the most dangerous lie is the one you choose not to see? What if, for survival, the human mind is wired to ignore the truth, to pretend ignorance is bliss, even when it isn't? We've all heard it before. I didn't know. The moment someone utters those words, the world seems to collapse into a haze of ambiguity. It's a defense, a strategy, a decision made with chilling precision. Tactical ignorance, the conscious act of turning a blind eye to something that could shatter your reality, disrupt your comfort, or even change the course of your life. It's not just about missing details. It's about actively choosing not to see. It's about navigating a world that demands awareness while silently opting for oblivion. It's easier that way. Less guilt, less responsibility. It's the mind's way of locking itself behind a door, hoping that if it ignores the problem long enough, it will simply disappear. Tactical ignorance doesn't happen by accident. It's a skill honed over time, a form of self-preservation. The same way a soldier might look away from the horrors of war to maintain focus on the mission, we look away from truths that might break us. It's a strategy for emotional survival. The more we ignore, the less we feel. The less we feel, the less we suffer. But here's the catch. This refusal to see often leads to consequences far worse than the truth itself. You think you're safe. You think you've shielded yourself from the storm. But in truth, you've only sealed your fate. The price of this ignorance is steep. You may ignore the health warnings, telling yourself it's just a phase. You may ignore the cracks in a relationship, thinking it'll work itself out. You might even ignore the warnings of your own conscience, convincing yourself that what you don't know can't hurt you. But ignorance isn't a shield. It's a trap. It's a slow, insidious poison, slowly wearing away your mind, your soul, and eventually you realize too late that the very thing you refused to acknowledge has grown into a beast that can no longer be ignored. The cracks become chasms. The little lies become mountains. The truth, once buried, rises up like a ghost, ready to claim its revenge. There are those who use tactical ignorance as a weapon, too. They rely on it. Politicians, CEOs, even the most well-meaning of individuals. They hide behind the shield of, "I didn't know," allowing the world to crumble around them. It's a calculated move. When everything falls apart, they can always say they weren't responsible. They didn't see it coming. But history is filled with examples where this very strategy led to downfall. Think of the great empires that crumbled under the weight of their leaders' denial. The Titanic, for example, a ship heralded as unsinkable. The crew, the passengers, and the captain ignored the dangers of the icy waters, dismissed the warnings, and continued their voyage. They chose ignorance, believing the truth was something that would never disrupt their grand narrative. The iceberg didn't care about their ignorance. The ship didn't care about their comfort. In the end, the truth was undeniable, and it sank them all. The power of tactical ignorance lies in its ability to blind, but it also reveals a terrifying truth. The more we ignore, the more we invite chaos into our lives. We distance ourselves from reality, but we also leave ourselves vulnerable to its most destructive forces. What we fail to see today will be the very thing that destroys us tomorrow. Maybe for a while we can pretend that nothing matters, that the world can go on without facing the hard truths. But this is a lie we tell ourselves, because sooner or later, life catches up. The walls built from ignorance begin to crumble. The silence becomes deafening, and when the truth finally breaks through, it will be more than just an inconvenience. It will be the very thing that forces us to confront the monsters we've ignored for so long. Tactical ignorance may offer temporary comfort, but in the end, it's a prison of your own making. You choose not to see, not because it's easier, but because you fear what would happen if you did. But the mind, no matter how cleverly it turns away, cannot escape the truth forever. Sooner or later the door will open, and when it does, the truth won't just be waiting. It will be waiting with a vengeance. The question isn't whether you can ignore it. The question is, what happens when you can no longer afford to? Controlled confusion. What if I told you that the most powerful way to control someone is not through force, not with threats or violence, but through confusion? Imagine walking through life with the nagging feeling that you can't trust your own thoughts, that you've lost the ability to distinguish between truth and manipulation. It starts innocently enough. Maybe it's a small inconsistency in what someone says, a slight contradiction. I never said that, they tell you, but you remember it differently. You start questioning yourself, wondering if your memory is failing you. It's subtle at first, so subtle you think nothing of it. But slowly it creeps into every interaction, every decision, until you're caught in a mental fog. And here's the real kicker. What if that confusion is exactly what they want? What if every time you feel that uncertainty gnawing at you, it's a carefully crafted response to keep you off balance, to make you doubt yourself, to render you dependent on someone else for clarity? You're not overreacting. It's not just in your head. You've been gaslighted by the most insidious method, controlled confusion. This isn't just about someone lying to you. This is about planting seeds of doubt so deeply that you begin to question everything. Your actions, your beliefs, your values. They make you wonder, am I the problem? And once that question takes root, you're trapped in a cycle. You'll start second-guessing every choice, every word you speak, as if you're walking on eggshells in your own mind. Think about how this plays out in the real world. A politician tells you one thing, then a few days later contradicts themselves. The media says one thing, but another outlet gives an entirely different story. Over time, it becomes impossible to know which side to trust. But that's the point. When everyone is speaking in contradictions, when every narrative feels twisted, the truth becomes something elusive, almost mythical. And it's not just in the public sphere. It happens in relationships too. The partner who says one thing, then behaves in a completely different way. The friend who acts like they've forgotten the promises they made. Over time, you begin to doubt your perception, your understanding of reality. Did I imagine that? You ask yourself. Maybe I misunderstood. Here's where it gets truly dangerous. Controlled confusion doesn't just make you uncertain. It makes you reliant on the very person who's causing the chaos. You start looking to them for answers, for validation. They become the one constant in a world that seems to be falling apart, and you start to depend on their version of reality to feel anchored. This is a psychological trap. It's not about overt power. It's about slowly eroding your ability to think clearly, to act with confidence. It makes you ask, what if I'm just overreacting? And the more you question yourself, the deeper the trap grows. In the end, it's not about you. It's about control. Controlled confusion is the unseen puppet master, pulling your strings without you ever realizing it. And when you finally wake up to it, it might be too late. You might find yourself so tangled in the web of doubt that escaping feels impossible. So ask yourself, how many times have you let confusion make the decisions for you? How many times have you silently surrendered your thoughts, your clarity, to someone else? And most importantly, what will it take for you to break free? Idealization, devaluation, discard cycle. What if I told you that the people who claim to love you the most could also be the ones who destroy you the most? You've heard of toxic relationships, but what if the true danger lies in how they seduce you, break you, and then leave you shattered without you even realizing it was happening? This is the cycle of idealization, devaluation, and discard. It's a psychological trap, one that creeps up on you and leaves you questioning your worth, your reality, and sometimes even your sanity. It starts like a dream. You're seen, you're noticed. In a world full of noise, someone has honed in on you, paying attention in a way that feels almost divine. They make you feel special. You're everything they've been searching for, the object of their affection and admiration. You're perfect in their eyes, a glowing reflection of everything they desire. This is the idealization phase, a time when you are placed on a pedestal, showered with compliments, love, and attention. They seem to understand you better than anyone else. They make you believe that you're irreplaceable, that you're the center of their world, and at first, you can't help but believe it. But this idealized version of you, this perfect image, is not real. It's a construct, built to hook you, to make you believe that this is love. But it's not. It's manipulation in its most enticing form. And slowly, the cracks begin to show. The once adoring gaze starts to change. Compliments turn into criticisms, love turns into indifference, and what was once perfection now feels like a burden. This is the devaluation phase. The once warm, loving partner now sees you as a mere object, something to be controlled, broken down, and tested. Your flaws are amplified, scrutinized, exaggerated. Every mistake you make is now a reason to be punished, to be belittled. The person who once adored you now seems disgusted by you, and you can't understand why. You begin to doubt yourself. You question if you're truly as perfect as they once said, or if you were just a fragile illusion they created to feed their needs. It's subtle. You may even start defending them, making excuses for their behavior. You convince yourself that they're just going through a rough patch. After all, weren't they once so perfect? They were your world. They made you feel seen. How could they suddenly treat you like this? The confusion is maddening, but the emotional grip they have on you only tightens. Their unpredictability creates a kind of emotional whiplash that keeps you tethered to them, desperate for the love you once felt. It's a kind of brainwashing, made all the more painful by the fact that you're still clinging to the person they once pretended to be. Then the final stage hits, discard. This is the cruelest phase. It's not an argument. It's not a confrontation. It's an abrupt, cold dismissal. You're no longer needed. The person who once told you that you were everything to them is now gone, without warning, without explanation. All the love, all the promises, vanish into thin air, and you're left standing in the wreckage, feeling worthless, abandoned, and confused. You were nothing more than a tool, used to fulfill their emotional needs until they moved on to their next victim. This is the idealization, devaluation, discard cycle, a trap so insidious that you don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. But why does it work? Why do we fall for it? The answer lies in something far more complex than just emotional neediness. It's because love, at its core, is about connection. We crave validation. We seek out people who make us feel seen, understood, and important. When someone mirrors our desires, our wants, and even our personality, it's hard not to fall for them. Their attention feels like the validation we've been longing for, and so we dive in headfirst. We don't see the manipulation at play because we're too blinded by the fantasy. But the most terrifying part of the cycle is how it keeps us trapped. The person who idealizes you, devalues you, and discards you isn't necessarily a monster. They could be someone who genuinely believes they are acting out of love, or someone who has mastered the art of manipulation without even realizing it. The subtlety of this cycle is what makes it so dangerous. It's not always obvious. You don't always see the red flags until you're already deep in the trap. So, how do you protect yourself? First, understand that love doesn't need to be earned by performing for someone. Real love isn't conditional, and it doesn't fluctuate based on your behavior or their whims. Pay attention to how they treat you when the spotlight isn't on you. Are they only affectionate when they're getting something in return? Do they make you feel like you're always walking on eggshells? Notice the signs early and trust your instincts. Love that feels too perfect, too intense, or too sudden is often not real love at all. It's control. And above all, remember, you are worthy of love that isn't based on manipulation. You don't need to be anyone's object to be loved. Real love is steady, consistent, and sees you for who you truly are, flaws and all. So when you feel the tide start to change, when you feel that coldness creeping in, don't hesitate to walk away. Because no matter how much they tell you they love you, you deserve more than the destruction of the idealization, devaluation, discard cycle. You deserve a love that's real, not a mirage that fades the moment it touches the light. Gaslighting by proxy. Imagine this. You've been close friends with someone for years. You've shared secrets, laughed at the same inside jokes, and trusted them like family. But over the last few months, something feels off. Little things begin to happen. They start saying things that seem wrong. Maybe it's a small comment about something you remember differently, or a disagreement that's dismissed with a simple, "Oh, you're just overreacting." At first, it's easy to shrug off, but then others start chiming in. Your other friends, your family, even colleagues, they all start suggesting the same thing. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe your memory isn't as sharp as it used to be. What was once a close relationship now feels cold and distant, and you feel like you're losing control over your own mind. This is gaslighting by proxy, a twisted form of psychological manipulation where the manipulator convinces you that you're the problem, not just through direct interaction, but by enlisting others to turn on you. In essence, it's a form of emotional abuse where the person doing the gaslighting never directly engages you in the manipulation, but instead uses others, friends, family, co-workers, or even strangers, as their proxies. The end goal? To make you doubt your reality, your perception, your very sanity. But how does it work? It's not just a cruel game of deception. It's science at play. Our brains are wired for connection, for seeking validation from those we trust. When you experience gaslighting by proxy, you are put into a situation where everyone you trust starts to question you. This bombardment triggers a fear response. Your emotional center, the amygdala, starts firing, amplifying the distress signals in your brain. Your sense of reality begins to fragment because the people around you, the ones whose opinions you've always valued, are suddenly out of sync with your own experiences. They feed into the self-doubt, turning you into a shell of your former self, while the manipulator sits back and watches the chaos unfold. They might not even have to say much themselves. They've already planted the seeds of confusion in the minds of others. Picture this. A person in a relationship, for example, might constantly twist your words when you talk about your concerns. At first, they deny your feelings, telling you that you're just being too sensitive. But then, they start telling your friends and family how difficult you've become. They might say things like, "I don't know why she's so upset. I didn't even say anything." And then they'll turn to your circle of friends, claiming you're paranoid or delusional. Slowly, the people around you start to doubt you. The person who you once turned to for reassurance is now turning others against you. The insidious part of gaslighting by proxy is that you can't pinpoint the abuser. The manipulator isn't directly accusing you of anything. They've gotten other people to do the dirty work for them. And when you start questioning your own perception, it becomes nearly impossible to make sense of your reality. You begin to isolate yourself because you don't trust your own judgment anymore. Each interaction with those proxies feels like another piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit. But you can't see the full picture. The person orchestrating it all remains distant, never directly confronting you, but remaining the silent architect of your unraveling. Psychologically, it's a cycle that preys on a basic human need, the need for social validation. When everyone around you starts saying the same thing, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, maybe I really am the problem. And that's the moment the trap snaps shut. The sense of powerlessness sets in. You're not just questioning one relationship anymore. You're questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself. Every time you try to voice your confusion, you're met with dismissal, gaslighting you into believing you're imagining things. Over time, this constant self-doubt can erode your mental and emotional stability, making it hard to trust anyone, especially yourself. What makes this form of gaslighting so dangerous is that it's hard to spot. Unlike direct gaslighting, where the manipulator is at least in the room, playing their part in the charade, gaslighting by proxy operates like a shadow. The abuser stays hidden, using the people around you to chip away at your sense of reality. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're isolated and disconnected from your support network. The people you used to trust now think you're the problem, and you're left wondering, am I crazy? Or is this really happening? It's a cruel, strategic form of manipulation that relies on the power of social influence and your natural desire for connection and understanding. Your own brain works against you in this scenario, constantly trying to reconcile conflicting information from trusted sources, but only growing more confused with each new contradiction. Over time, you may even start to believe the lies that others are feeding you, abandoning your own version of the truth. The psychological toll is immense. It's not just a war on your mind. It's a war on your identity. If you ever find yourself in this situation, understand that what's happening is not your fault. The manipulator is clever, playing on your most vulnerable traits, your need for love, acceptance, and validation. But the twist? The moment you recognize this manipulation, it's still not too late. You can reclaim your sense of self, but it requires distancing yourself from the proxies, confronting the manipulator's tactics, and, most importantly, trusting your own perception of reality once again. Gaslighting by proxy may start with small moments of doubt, but in the end, it seeks to rob you of everything you hold dear: your sense of self, your relationships, and your peace of mind. The only way out, recognizing the trap before it's too late. Weaponized incompetence. There's a way to make someone feel like they're losing their mind. It's subtle, insidious, and it's happening right in front of you. But you won't see it at first, not until it's too late. Imagine this. Someone in your life, someone close to you, acts like they can't do the simplest tasks. They forget, they fail, they don't understand, and they need your help. Again, over and over. You start out thinking it's just laziness, but then you realize it's not. It's a tactic, a strategy. They're using their incompetence to control you. Welcome to the world of weaponized incompetence. At first, it doesn't seem like much. It's easy to dismiss as just forgetfulness, as a flaw, maybe even as a quirk. But as it happens again and again, you begin to feel the weight of it. You're the one who always ends up picking up the slack. You're the one who has to step in because they can't do it. And it's not just big things. It's the small things, too. The dishes that never get washed, the tasks that never get completed, the promises that are always broken. Why does this happen? How does it work? The answer is simpler than you think. It's not that the person is incapable, it's that they're choosing to appear incompetent. They don't want to do it, so they make it look like they can't. This is the core of weaponized incompetence. They make you feel like it's easier to do it yourself than to deal with their failure. Slowly they convince you that you're the problem. You start to believe it's your responsibility to fix things. You think they're just helpless, so you become the one doing everything. But what they're really doing is shifting the burden onto you. Picture this. A partner, after weeks of forgetting to take out the trash, says, "I'm sorry, I just don't know how you manage to do all this." You feel frustrated, annoyed, but with each repeated act, something else begins to happen. You feel guilty. You start to feel like maybe you're overreacting. Maybe they're not doing it on purpose. Maybe you're just too hard on them. And that's exactly what they want. They've got you questioning yourself. They've weaponized your own kindness, your own sense of fairness, until it becomes easier to just take over than to fight back. It doesn't stop there. It escalates. Maybe you stop asking them for help. After all, it's just easier this way. You've been trained. You've been manipulated into thinking it's not worth the fight. Then the emotional manipulation kicks in. "I really thought you could trust me to handle it," they say. And suddenly you're left wondering, is it really my fault? Have I been too controlling, too demanding? Their incompetence becomes your burden. And as you carry it, you forget to ask, who's actually incompetent here? This is the hidden cost of weaponized incompetence. It chips away at your self-esteem, your time, your mental energy. It makes you question your own worth. It pulls you into a cycle where you're doing everything, and they're doing nothing, all while making you feel like you're the one in the wrong. It's toxic, it's draining, and it's designed to keep you stuck in a loop where you're constantly giving, and they're constantly taking. So how do you break free from this? How do you stop the manipulation in its tracks? The first step is recognizing it. Stop letting guilt control your actions. Understand that their incompetence is not your responsibility. Ask yourself, why am I doing this for them? Is this helping them, or is it just enabling them? Set boundaries. Refuse to pick up the slack. Let them experience the consequences of their actions. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but remember, your time, your energy, your worth, those things matter. And if they don't want to pull their weight, that's not your problem. It's time to stop letting someone else's incompetence control your life Take back your power. You deserve to be treated with respect, not as someone's unpaid caretaker. It's not easy. But breaking free starts with the smallest act of resistance. Think about it. You're not their savior. You're not their caretaker. You're their equal. And once you remember that, nothing will ever feel the same. Desensitization by gradual exposure. We are creatures of habit, aren't we? It's easy to believe that we can control our reactions, that we can limit how much something affects us. But what if I told you that the more you expose yourself to something unsettling, something painful, the less you feel it? It's not a power you control. It's a process, a silent shift within your mind, slowly eroding your defenses. Desensitization by gradual exposure, the slow, invisible poison. Imagine this. The first time you hear a terrifying noise at night, your heart races, your breath sharpens. You're flooded with adrenaline. Your body screams at you to run, to hide. The second time it happens, you hesitate. Your pulse still quickens, but now there's a shadow of doubt. Maybe it was nothing. The third time, you barely flinch. It's just the wind, the house settling. By the fifth time, you don't even hear it anymore. You've grown numb to the fear. It's a deceptively simple process. Exposure, repetition. The brain learns to tune out discomfort, to dull the sharp edges of fear until it no longer feels like fear at all. What was once terrifying becomes mundane. It's like training yourself to be immune to a poison, only you never realize the poison is slowly changing you until it's too late. What was once intolerable becomes the new normal. You think you've mastered it, but you've only become complicit. This is desensitization. And it's not just about noises in the dark. It's the insidious way we adapt to violence in the media, to the endless stream of suffering and atrocity we're fed every day. The first time we witness a tragedy, it stops us in our tracks. It shakes us to our core. We might even shed a tear. But how many tragedies can one person endure before they stop feeling the weight of each new one? How many more shootings, more natural disasters, more wars can we absorb before we stop reacting altogether? How long before our empathy, that primal drive to feel, to help, to care, becomes just another hollow response? It's the news cycle, the constant barrage of horror that forces us into exposure again and again. Each time we're exposed a little more, the body learns, the mind dulls. Soon, we don't flinch, we don't cry, we just move on to the next headline, because there's always another tragedy, the one we just witnessed, already fading, replaced by the next. But it's not only the world around us that we grow numb to, it's ourselves. Have you ever noticed how the things that once hurt you, betrayals, failures, the sharp sting of loss, don't hurt as much anymore? Time doesn't heal all wounds. Repetition does. The longer we endure pain without reprieve, the less we feel it. What was once an open wound becomes just another scar, a reminder of a time when we felt too much. There's a reason why soldiers return from war changed. The constant exposure to death, to chaos, to suffering, it chips away at their humanity. The first time they witness violence, they can't process it. The second time, they survive. The third time, they endure. By the end, they're not even surprised by the violence anymore. It's simply part of the world they inhabit. They've been desensitized. What was once unimaginable is now just part of the landscape. But this process doesn't just happen in war zones or through media. It happens in our relationships, in our workplaces, in our own homes. The first time someone mistreats you, it feels like a betrayal. The second time, you question your judgment. By the 10th time, it's just how things are. You don't expect kindness anymore, not because you don't deserve it, but because you've learned to live without it. You've adjusted, you've adapted, and in that adaptation, something precious dies. In the depths of this process lies a terrifying truth. Desensitization doesn't make us stronger, it makes us weaker, it makes us complacent, accepting things we would have once fought against. It blinds us to the things that should shock us, the things that should spur us into action. The world becomes a little darker with each new exposure, until one day we realize that we've become part of the numbness. We've lost the ability to feel the things that should move us, to be shocked by what we've come to accept as normal. This is the quiet tragedy of desensitization. It doesn't just dull our senses, it erases them. We think we're learning to handle pain, to cope with the horrors of the world, but what we are really learning is how to stop caring. The tragedy isn't in the things that happen to us, it's in what we become in response, a hollow echo of who we once were. And the most chilling part, we never realize it's happening. The poison takes its time, sneaking in a little more each day, until one day we look at the world around us and wonder why we no longer feel anything at all. Unpredictable reward system. What if the very thing that keeps you going, the hope of reward, was also the thing that kept you trapped? What if the promise of something better, something just out of reach, was the key to your undoing? You've felt it before, the anticipation, the little burst of excitement when you check your phone, waiting for a notification, an email, a like. It could be anything. That fleeting moment when your phone buzzes and you wonder, is this it? The reward that makes it all worth it. But it's never consistent. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. The mystery of it is what hooks you. But here's the thing. That uncertainty, it's not by accident. It's designed. It's the unpredictable reward system at work. It's the reason you keep checking your notifications, even when you've seen nothing new for hours. You're chasing something you can't predict, but you're convinced it's just around the corner. So you keep going. You keep reaching. And each time you don't get it, you're more desperate for the next chance. This is how casinos make millions. Slot machines don't tell you when they'll pay out. They don't have a rhythm you can follow. You can't calculate when the reward will come. But that's exactly why you keep playing. It's not the reward itself that keeps you hooked. It's the uncertainty, the question mark hanging over every attempt. Maybe this time, maybe the next time, maybe the one after that. The anticipation feeds you, and then it starves you again, only to feed you a little more. It's a cycle, a loop, a trap. And it works. You know it works because you've experienced it. You've felt it in every moment you've refreshed your feed for the 100th time. You've felt it when you wait for someone to reply, knowing you could be left on red. But still you wait. You don't even stop to ask, why am I doing this? Because the answer is simple. The reward might come. It might be there. And the thrill of might is enough to drag you back over and over. But here's the darker truth. This system isn't just in your phone or the casino. It's everywhere. In your job, in your relationships, in your dreams. The world, in all its chaos and complexity, uses this same principle to keep you moving. You keep striving for something you can't fully see or touch. Success, recognition, love. These are all unpredictable rewards. And the game is rigged. The more you get, the more you need. The more you strive for it, the more elusive it becomes. It's like chasing shadows in a fog that never clears. You may think you're in control, but you're not. You're just another player in a game that never ends, where every hope is a baited hook and every win leaves you wanting more. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most dangerous part of all, because when you stop chasing, when you step away, you realize how empty it all is. You realize that the reward was never the point. It was the chase that keeps you from seeing the bigger picture. So ask yourself, are you chasing the reward, or is the reward chasing you? False scarcity illusion. You've seen it before, that rush to buy something, that intense feeling of urgency, the clock ticking down, the product label flashing, limited edition. It's a strange force, almost magnetic, pulling at something deep inside you. But here's the unsettling truth. This urgency, this need, is not a natural response. It's carefully crafted. It's an illusion, one that's manipulated to make you act before you think. And once you're in, it's too late. You've already made the purchase, already given in to something that wasn't real. This is the false scarcity illusion. Scarcity, in its true form, is simple: limited resources, limited availability, a natural law of the world. But the false scarcity illusion, that's something else entirely. It's the art of making something seem scarce when it's not. It's the psychological trick used by marketers, advertisers, and even manipulators to make you believe you're running out of time, that you have to act now or miss out. But in reality, the clock isn't ticking. The product isn't as limited as they want you to think. And yet you still rush, driven by an invisible force. Let's take Black Friday as an example, one of the most notorious examples of false scarcity. You've seen it. Store after store, advertising, sales, flashing, only 10 left, or hurry, ends at midnight. But what's really happening behind the scenes? These limited deals are often prepared months in advance. Retailers may even have stocked up more items than they're willing to sell at full price. The real scarcity is not in the product, but in the psychological manipulation. The deal is designed to make you feel like you're running out of time, to force your hand. And that's when the mind kicks in, driven by fear, the fear of missing out. So how does it work? It starts simple. Step 1. Create a sense of urgency. You see a countdown timer, a low stock alert. In that moment, your mind goes into overdrive. Your rational side wants to wait, to think it over, but the irrational side kicks in. This is your last chance. You might never get another one. That's step 1, planting the seed of urgency. Step 2, intensify the feeling. As you hover over that Buy Now button, the message shifts. Only 2 left in stock. You're told the item is in demand. And with every click, that urgency grows stronger. It's no longer just a deal. It's a race against time. The fact that you've already invested some thought, even a few seconds, makes it harder to pull back. You've already begun to imagine the outcome owning that product, securing the deal. Step 3. Leverage social proof. Have you ever seen those only X people viewing this now notifications? It's as if everyone else is already in on secret. That subtle influence, telling you that others are choosing, that others are acting, makes you feel even more compelled. If everyone else is rushing, maybe I should too. But the truth is, Those notifications aren't always accurate. They're just there to nudge you into joining the herd. Finally, step 4. Play on regret. You'll never find a deal like this again, they say. If you leave now, it might be gone forever. It's a message designed to make you feel that the opportunity is fleeting, that if you don't act now, you'll be stuck with regret. This is the final push, the one that makes you hit buy now, before the thoughts of doubt can even catch up. But why does this work so well? Why does it get to us? The answer lies deep within our brains, in the primal fear of missing out, or FOMO. As humans, we evolved to act quickly in situations that seemed to threaten our survival, whether it was a scarce resource or a fleeting opportunity. This same wiring that helped our ancestors hunt, gather, and protect themselves is now being exploited by marketers. It's a deep-rooted instinct that we rarely question, and one that's easily manipulated. The frightening truth is that, most of the time, we don't even realize we're being played. We don't see the gears turning behind the scenes. We don't question the scarcity. By the time the item is in our hands, we've already moved past the decision-making process. We've already been swept up in the rush. And what happens when the purchase is made? For many, it's a mix of relief and regret. The relief that you act quickly, but also the nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, you didn't need it after all. So, how do you protect yourself from the false scarcity illusion? Start by slowing down. When you feel that rush, when you see the countdown clock ticking away, stop and breathe. Ask yourself, is this really a limited opportunity, or is this simply a cleverly crafted illusion? Don't let your fear of missing out dictate your choices. Take a step back, evaluate the real value of the product, and remember that not every deal that seems too good to pass up is actually a deal at all. Remember, the clock is only ticking if you let it. The scarcity you fear may not be real. Artificial authority creation. Imagine this. You're sitting in a room full of people, eyes glued to the stage. The person speaking commands attention with every word, as if they hold the key to some unspoken truth. Their voice is calm, authoritative. They make references to concepts that sound complicated, yet simple. They seem to know everything. And for a moment, you find yourself hanging on every word, believing they must be the expert, the one with all the answers. It's almost hypnotic. You've been trained to trust authority, and they've mastered the art of appearing like it. But here's the thing. What if I told you that authority isn't something inherent? It's something that can be manufactured. This is the phenomenon of artificial authority creation, the manipulation of perception to make someone seem more knowledgeable, more powerful, and more trustworthy than they really are. The power to appear as an authority isn't about actual expertise or experience. It's about perception, about how well you can convince others that you have the answers. And trust me, once someone believes that, it's hard to break them from it. So how does this work? It starts with an illusion. At the core of it is the psychological principle of social proof. People tend to follow others who are seen as authoritative figures because we are wired to assume that if others trust someone, they must be trustworthy. This is why famous speakers, leaders, or even influencers can create an instant air of authority. It's not just about what they say, but how they say it. The tone of their voice, the cadence, the use of jargon, it all helps to build a perception that they know more than you, even if they don't. But there's more to it than that. Have you ever noticed how experts often speak in terms that sound like secrets? Things you wouldn't know unless you were in the know? That's part of the trick. By speaking in a specialized or complex manner, they create a barrier between themselves and their audience. This makes the audience feel like they need this person's knowledge to understand the world. The more opaque the information, the more expert the speaker seems. The truth is, most of us don't have the time or the inclination to fact-check every claim, and manipulators count on that. This tactic plays on the psychological need for certainty and the innate human tendency to look for someone who seems to have control over chaos. Real-world examples of artificial authority creation are everywhere. Take the world of business, for example. Ever heard a startup founder talk about their product with such passion that it almost feels like they've uncovered the secret to life? They use terms that are only half understood, but enough to make their audience believe they're a genius. In cults, it's even more extreme. Leaders craft elaborate belief systems, often claiming to have exclusive access to truths that no one else can see. Their authority is based not on the veracity of their claims, but on the psychological control they exert through those claims. Now imagine, you've been listening to this so-called expert for months, nodding along, believing every word. And then, one day, something doesn't add up. Maybe they make a bold claim that doesn't quite line up with what you've learned. Maybe a subtle contradiction slips through. You start to question, but you're already too deep. You've invested so much trust, so much energy into this image of them as an expert that it becomes almost impossible to step back. That's when the trap is set. At this moment, you might realize that the authority wasn't real, it was constructed. But by then, it's too late. The emotional and psychological investment you've made in the person or idea is so strong that questioning them feels like questioning your own judgment. Your brain's cognitive dissonance kicks in, a mechanism that forces you to justify the contradiction. You've been manipulated into seeing them as an authority figure, and now your mind is desperate to maintain that belief. This is the danger of artificial authority. It doesn't just affect what you know, it affects how you think. It alters your entire mental framework. It's a form of psychological manipulation that's harder to detect because it's rooted in trust, a feeling that's deeply personal and almost sacred. The brain is designed to trust authority figures. It's built into our survival instincts. But when that trust is misused, when it's manipulated, it's not just a simple mistake. It's a betrayal that can shape your decisions for years. The mechanics of artificial authority creation are everywhere you look. From the influencer who uses hashtags like a magic spell, to the business guru who throws around vague yet confident advice, to the charismatic leader who sways crowds with ease. It's all the same game. Create the illusion of authority, and you can control the narrative. The psychological toll is real too. The more you fall into the trap, the more it becomes a cycle. You're addicted to their words, their presence, their power, and with every cycle it becomes harder to break free. So, next time you hear someone speak with that smooth, confident tone, ask yourself, are they truly an expert? Or have they simply mastered the art of making you believe they are? The difference could be the most dangerous illusion you ever fall for. Empathy. Weaponization. There's a way to control someone without force, without threats, without a single raised voice. It's a subtle, insidious manipulation that can make you feel guilty for even thinking about saying no. It's called empathy weaponization. You think empathy is a strength. You pride yourself on being able to understand others, to feel their pain, to share their joy. It makes you human, right? But what if I told you that empathy could be used against you? What if it's the very thing that traps you, slowly, over time, until you're questioning your own worth? Empathy weaponization works like this. It starts with kindness, with caring. It's a genuine offer of understanding, but then it shifts. The person on the other side doesn't just ask for help. They make you feel obligated to help. They're not asking for empathy anymore. They're demanding it. They make you feel as though their pain is your responsibility, and suddenly you're in a cycle of giving, 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 until you have nothing left to give. It starts small. Maybe a friend confides in you about their struggles. "I just don't know what I'm going to do," they say, eyes wide with desperation. You listen. You offer support. It feels good to be needed. But then they start calling more, texting more. Every conversation turns into a cry for help. Slowly, you start to feel like their emotional well-being rests on your shoulders. You feel guilty if you don't pick up the phone, guilty if you don't say the right thing. They don't need your advice. They need your constant attention. And you start to wonder, is it really guilt? Or are they just so good at making you feel like it's your fault? Now think about a partner. At first, they show you affection, love, all those sweet things you crave. But then, it starts to twist. They're not just showing you affection. They're making you feel like you owe it to them. "I did all of this for you. I thought you cared about me," they'll say, their voice coated in hurt. And just like that, you're trapped. You find yourself apologizing for things you didn't even do, agreeing to things you never wanted. You feel like you're drowning in their emotions, but you can't escape. Every disagreement is turned into an emotional test. Every action becomes a debt you have to repay. It gets worse. You begin to internalize the manipulation. At first, you felt sympathy, empathy, real, human emotion. But now it's more than that. You start to believe you have to do it. It's not just about helping anymore. You convince yourself that without you, they'll fall apart. You've become their emotional anchor, and they've convinced you that you're the only one who can hold them up. And then, the cost becomes clear. You lose yourself, your needs, your desires, your boundaries. They don't matter anymore. You've been conditioned to believe that theirs do. You've been trained to suppress your own feelings, to avoid their wrath, their disappointment. But in the end, you're empty. You've given so much and received so little, and you wonder, how did it get to this point? The danger lies in the fact that this manipulation is subtle. It feels like care, like love, like understanding. It's easy to ignore the warning signs because, after all, who wouldn't want to help someone in pain? But what happens when the helping becomes an expectation? What happens when empathy isn't a gift, but a weapon? The warning is clear. Empathy weaponized isn't just emotionally draining, it's toxic. It can control your actions, your choices, and even your sense of self-worth. But here's the truth. You are not responsible for anyone's happiness. You are not obligated to carry their emotional burdens, no matter how much they try to make you feel like you are. You have the power to recognize this manipulation. You have the right to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your energy. The only person who can give you permission to stop feeling responsible for someone else's emotions is you. So take a step back. Be kind to yourself. Empathy isn't a tool to control. It's a gift to share, not a weight to carry alone. Recognize it, resist it, and reclaim your life. Triangulation. Imagine this. You're standing in a room, listening intently to two people talking. One speaks with kindness, but there's something in their words that makes you uncomfortable, as if they're subtly criticizing you, pushing you into a corner. The other person defends you. But their words carry an edge of insincerity. You're trapped, caught between their conflicting narratives, and suddenly you don't know who you can trust anymore. This is triangulation. It's not just a manipulation tactic. It's a psychological trap, a silent war that twists your mind until you doubt your own reality. Triangulation is a delicate dance of control, played by people who know how to manipulate your perceptions, bending you to their will without you even noticing. It begins innocently enough. One person, the manipulator, creates a wedge between two others, positioning themselves as the mediator. They may tell you what someone else thinks, but always in a way that paints that person in a negative light. They don't speak directly. Instead, they use you as a pawn, dragging you into a false conflict. The entire time, you remain unaware that you are being used to fuel someone else's agenda. At first, the manipulator's intentions may seem harmless. They want to help, to be the peacekeeper, to make sure everyone's feelings are considered. But it's all a facade, a veneer of concern masking something far more insidious. They encourage you to share your grievances about the other person, subtly shaping your words to create division. The other person, not knowing the game being played, begins to feel alienated. They start to mistrust you, unaware that the manipulator has been whispering lies in their ear as well. This dynamic escalates quickly. What was once a harmless conversation becomes a toxic exchange of words and emotions, each side retreating further into their own corner. You start questioning yourself. Why is your relationship with the other person changing? Why does everything seem off? And why does it feel like the manipulator always has the answer, always knows exactly what to say to fix things, while making everything else worse? Triangulation is a form of emotional warfare, and it doesn't need to be loud or dramatic to be effective. It's quiet, insidious, and deceptively clever. The manipulator doesn't need to raise their voice or demand loyalty. They simply whisper the right words, plant a seed of doubt, and watch as you begin to question everyone around you, including your own perceptions. You find yourself stuck in a tug of war, unable to free yourself because you no longer trust your own feelings. You've been isolated from the truth, and in the process, you've become an unwilling actor in someone else's narrative. History is filled with examples of triangulation used to control, manipulate, and divide. Take, for instance, the stories of dictators who thrived on creating false divisions within their own ranks. They would pit generals against each other, sow distrust in their own inner circles, all while pretending to be the sole figure who could bring peace. The divide and conquer strategy wasn't just about military tactics. It was about weakening people's sense of trust in one another, breaking down the bonds that could have united them. The dictator, standing at the center, remained the only one untouched, the only one who could fix the problem they themselves had created. This isn't just something that happens in politics, though. Triangulation thrives in families, workplaces, and friendships. The person at the center might be your parent, your partner, your colleague, someone you trust, someone you rely on. And yet, they use you like a pawn, pulling strings behind the scenes, creating chaos without ever breaking a sweat. They tell you what to say, who to talk to, and who to avoid, all the while never admitting their hand in the mess they've created. You become so immersed in the chaos that you start to believe it's your fault, that you are the one causing the friction, the discontent, the pain. But the reality is, the manipulator doesn't care about your well-being. They only care about control, about having you dance to their tune while they remain unseen, unscathed. And the worst part? You can never fully escape the trap unless you recognize the game for what it is. The first step is understanding that triangulation is real, that you are being manipulated, and that your emotions, your relationships, are not your own to control. They've been taken from you, piece by piece, until you no longer recognize who you are. The haunting truth of triangulation is that it's not always obvious. It doesn't come with flashing warning signs or dramatic confrontations. Instead, it lurks in the quiet moments, in the conversations that seem so innocent, and in the lies that everyone believes are truths. And once you're caught in it, once you've been sucked into the emotional crossfire, it's almost impossible to see a way out. The manipulator will always be there, lurking in the background, whispering their lies and pulling the strings. So ask yourself, when was the last time you felt truly at peace in a relationship, in a situation where someone else seemed to always have the upper hand? When was the last time you stopped to question who is shaping your reality and why? Foot in the mouth technique. What if I told you that the most dangerous words you could ever say are the ones you didn't mean to? What if your innocent slip of the tongue, the words you wish you could take back, were actually the key to controlling the people around you? You know the feeling. You're in a conversation, everything seems fine, and then, bam, you say something that doesn't quite sit right. But it's too late. The damage is done. But what if that wasn't a mistake at all? What if it was a deliberate trap, a subtle manipulation tactic known as the foot-in-the-mouth technique? It sounds almost too simple to be real, doesn't it? You might think, who could possibly control someone with just an accidental mistake? But the truth is that seemingly innocent mistake, the words you didn't mean to say, are far from accidental. In fact, they're one of the most insidious ways to manipulate and gain control over another person. Imagine you're talking to someone you need something from. Maybe it's a favor, or maybe you're trying to influence their decision. You start the conversation confidently, carefully selecting your words, but then, out of nowhere, you slip. You let something irrelevant, something embarrassing, or even something self-deprecating fall out of your mouth. A small mistake, right? But then, something shifts. You've made them feel superior. You've lowered your guard. And in that moment, they become the one in control. They've won without even trying. Why? Because you gave them something they didn't earn, a position of power. The foot-in-the-mouth technique works by creating an imbalance. You've accidentally revealed a weakness, an insecurity, or an unwanted truth. In doing so, you've invited the other person to take advantage of it. They can now control the flow of the conversation, steer it in the direction they want, and use your vulnerability against you. And here's the kicker. You let them. Without even realizing, you gave them the keys to your kingdom. It's a dangerous cycle. You think you're just talking. You think you're just being yourself. But every time you make that mistake, you've handed over more than just words. You've handed over your influence. The more you slip, the more you lose. You give them power over you, and in return, you're left scrambling to regain what you never even realized was slipping away. But it's not just personal interactions. This technique doesn't care whether it's in a workplace, a friendship, or even a relationship. The foot-in-the-mouth technique has been used throughout history by politicians, con artists, and cult leaders. They use this very trick to make you doubt your own worth, to make you feel small, and to place them in a position of influence over your life. They create a narrative where you're not in control. They make you feel vulnerable, and you start to depend on them, trusting them to help you regain your sense of stability. You've felt it before, haven't you? That creeping discomfort when someone uses your slip-up against you, the doubt they plant, the quiet, growing sense of helplessness as they twist your words, making you question your own thoughts. Now imagine this. What if every conversation you have is a battlefield? What if, every time you speak, you're unknowingly surrendering parts of yourself? What if you're the one who has been manipulated all along, trapped by your own words? In the end, the foot-in-the-mouth technique isn't just about what you say. It's about the power you give away when you speak without thinking. Every slip is an invitation for someone else to take control, to shift the narrative in their favor. And once they've done that, it's hard to get it back. The next time you speak, ask yourself, are you really in control of your words, or are your words controlling you? Semantic infiltration. What if I told you that words can be more dangerous than weapons? That a single phrase, a slight shift in language, could manipulate you, control your thoughts, and even alter the course of your life without you ever realizing it? This isn't some far-fetched conspiracy. It's happening right now, all around you. We call it semantic infiltration. A quiet, subtle erosion of meaning, a Trojan horse disguised as harmless language, slipping past your defenses until it shapes the way you think, feel, and act. Semantic infiltration is the process by which meaning is gradually altered, often without our awareness, to influence behavior or beliefs. It's not about misusing words for the sake of confusion. It's about embedding ideas so deeply into our vocabulary that they seem natural, even self-evident, until one day we look around and realize how much our language, and by extension, our mind shave, changed. Let's look at a chilling historical example, the way Nazi propaganda redefined terms like freedom and order. In the lead-up to World War II, the Nazi regime took everyday concepts and subtly twisted them. Freedom, once a symbol of personal autonomy, became synonymous with state control. Order no longer meant harmony or balance, but was instead used to justify oppression and violence. This manipulation didn't come overnight. It crept into public consciousness, layer by layer, until the language itself became a tool of control, shaping how people viewed their government, their neighbors, and even themselves. Now, let's break it down. The first step in semantic infiltration is subtlety. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It introduces new meanings, just a hint at first. But it makes you question old assumptions. Maybe it's a harmless rewording of a law, a news headline that uses loaded language, or a shift in the way certain groups are described. At first, these changes seem insignificant, like an insignificant detail you might overlook, but as they accumulate, they reshape entire systems of thought. The second step is normalization. Over time, the new meanings become part of the common lexicon. The words don't feel strange anymore. They've become so ingrained that you don't even question them. Think about how terms like fake news or alternative facts have shifted our understanding of truth. What once seemed like a clear distinction between reality and fabrication has become blurred. It's no longer about objective truth. It's about perception. Once a concept is normalized in this way, it becomes much harder to challenge or even see for what it is. The third step is resistance to change. By the time you realize something has shifted, it's too late. The new meanings are so entrenched that even attempting to push back feels like an uphill battle. It's as though the language itself has become a barrier, not allowing room for alternative viewpoints. When you try to question a term or its new meaning, you're often met with hostility or defensiveness. This is a psychological mechanism called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when your existing beliefs clash with the new meanings that have been ingrained. Instead of critically analyzing the changes, you'll often subconsciously accept them to avoid that discomfort. So why does this work? Why do we fall for it? It's all about trust and familiarity. Human brains are wired to trust language. We use it every day to make sense of the world. When someone speaks in terms we understand, we lower our guard. This is why semantic infiltration is so insidious. It plays on this natural tendency to trust and accept words at face value. The more familiar a phrase becomes, the less likely we are to question its deeper implications. In a world where time and attention are limited, we rely on shortcuts, mental habits that help us navigate the overwhelming flood of information. And that's when the infiltration happens. A seemingly innocuous term is planted in our minds, and we don't realize it's there until it has already started to shape our world view. The frightening truth is that semantic infiltration works because it's gradual and almost invisible. It's a kind of psychological sleight of hand. It doesn't force you into submission. It lulls you into compliance. Like the boiling frog, you won't notice the heat until it's too late. By the time you realize how much your language has been altered, your perceptions of reality, your values, and even your identity have already been redefined. So how can you protect yourself? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to the language around you, especially the words that are used repeatedly in political, social, or corporate discourse. Ask yourself, what do these terms really mean? How are they being used to shape my understanding of the world? When you hear a word or phrase that feels off, dig deeper. Question its origin and its implications. Don't let words slip past you without scrutiny. The second step is critical thinking. Always challenge the status quo. Language is a powerful tool, but it's only as good as the way it's used. Be aware of the forces trying to shape your reality through the language you use. Recognize when terms are being used to manipulate your emotions, obscure the truth, or push an agenda. The more you question, the less vulnerable you become. Semantic infiltration is a silent force, but you can fight back. Keep your mind sharp, your words intentional, and your understanding of language ever evolving. After all, the moment you lose control of your words, you lose control of your thoughts. And once that happens, the battle for your mind is already over. Information withholding. Imagine this. You're standing in a room full of people, a conversation happening around you, but you're stuck, staring at a piece of information that's just out of reach. Everyone around you knows it, but no one will say it. The tension is palpable. They don't speak about it, but you can feel its weight. You ask for clarification, but they dodge, divert, or simply smile. You're left with nothing but questions, your mind spinning in circles. And just when you think you can't take it anymore, they casually drop a hint, just enough to leave you craving more. It's as if they hold the key to a secret world, and you're locked outside. This feeling of being intentionally kept in the dark? It's called information withholding. At first, it might seem like a harmless quirk. Maybe they're busy, or they don't have all the answers. But as it continues, something changes. You start to feel anxious, unsure, and even a little dependent. What you don't know begins to feel like a puzzle, and suddenly, that missing piece becomes your entire focus. You can't stop thinking about it. The more you try to dig, the more elusive it becomes. And that's the goal of information withholding, to control your perception, your behavior, and often, your emotions. This tactic works because our brains are wired to seek out information. We're naturally curious creatures, hardwired to understand our environment. But when key pieces of that environment are hidden from us, our brains go into overdrive. We search, we ask, we push for answers, because we're not just searching for facts. We're trying to restore a sense of control. The feeling of being left in the dark, of not knowing, triggers discomfort, anxiety, and a deep desire to fix it. This is where the manipulator steps in. They control when and how you receive the information, feeding it to you in small, controlled doses. This is classic intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological principle that keeps you glued to your phone, waiting for the next notification, the next like, or the next crumb of attention. In the workplace, this could be your boss withholding key information about a project, making you constantly second-guess your work and your decisions, leaving you uncertain and dependent on their approval. In relationships, it might look like your partner holding back key details about their day or their feelings, leaving you guessing, searching for signs of affection or discontent that never seem to fully add up. Or, in the context of a cult or high-control group, it's a deliberate manipulation to keep followers desperate for knowledge that only the leader can provide. The more they withhold, the more you crave. You're led to believe that if you just behave, just stay loyal, you'll eventually be let in on the secret. But that moment never comes. Here's where it gets dangerous. At first, the manipulator's behavior may feel like benign neglect, a simple oversight. But as you seek answers, you begin to question yourself. Am I being too demanding? Why are they acting so distant? You find yourself trying harder, leaning in more, trying to prove you deserve to know. The more you chase the information, the more elusive it becomes, until the need for it starts to overshadow everything else in your life. You feel like you're slowly losing control, but the more you beg for answers, the more the manipulator pulls away, tightening their grip on the information they hold. The trap is set. Your emotional need for clarity becomes so strong that it overtakes your ability to think clearly. Your sense of self-worth becomes tied to whether or not you're given access to this piece of information. They know this, and they play you like a puppet. And just when you feel like you're on the edge of getting what you want, they throw you a small bone, a tiny piece of the puzzle that makes you think you're closer, when in reality, you're just another step deeper into their control. This cycle of reward and deprivation keeps you hooked. Why does this work so well? It's simple. Your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that fuels addictive behaviors, every time you get a little closer to the answer. The occasional pieces of information, however small, feel like a victory. But the sense of satisfaction is fleeting, and the anxiety, frustration, and craving for more information remain. It's the same addictive cycle that keeps people scrolling endlessly on social media or gambling, the promise of more, but never quite enough. So, what's the psychological cost? The longer you remain in this cycle, the more you lose touch with your own sense of agency. The manipulator doesn't just control information, They control your emotions, your thoughts, and your sense of reality. You begin to question whether you're imagining things, whether it's really that bad, or whether you're just overreacting. But by the time you realize what's happening, the damage has already been done. Your dependence on their approval, their secrets, and their validation is firmly cemented. In the end, information withholding isn't just about keeping you in the dark. It's about keeping you hooked. It's about making you feel powerless, while simultaneously making you believe that the power lies in their hands. They control your reality, your narrative, and your perception. And once that power is in their hands, it's difficult, if not impossible, to break free. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where information feels like it's slipping through your fingers, ask yourself, is this a mystery you're solving, or a trap you're walking into? Silent treatment. There's a way to make someone feel like they're losing their mind without saying a single word. You don't have to shout, threaten, or even touch them. All you have to do is ignore them. It's the silent treatment. It's quiet, it's subtle, and it's devastating. At first, it seems harmless. Maybe it's a fight. Maybe someone's upset. But soon, that silence becomes a weapon, cutting through the air like a blade. It's not just that someone isn't talking to you, it's the feeling that you don't exist. They've chosen to erase you, to make you invisible. And you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? Why am I being treated like this? Here's how it works. When you're given the silent treatment, it's not just an absence of sound. It's a flood of feelings that come rushing in. First, confusion. Then, self-doubt. You replay the last conversation, the last interaction, over and over in your head, searching for the moment you messed up. Then comes the guilt. You begin to believe that somehow you deserve this coldness. And with that guilt comes the fear. The fear that you're not worthy of being loved, of being seen, of being heard. You become trapped in your own mind, convinced that it's your fault, even if it's not. Imagine a parent who does this to their child. A simple "I'm not talking to you" is enough. The child doesn't understand why. Maybe it's for something they did. Maybe it's because they didn't do something right. But the worst part is that the parent isn't even saying why they're upset. The child doesn't get to fight for their innocence. They just sit in silence, terrified of doing anything that might make the silence last longer. Over time, this child learns to shrink, to make themselves as small as possible, so they don't make waves. They've learned that the quiet is a punishment. Now picture this in a romantic relationship. At first, it might be a day of silence after a fight, but the next time, it's a week. Then it's longer. The partner stops responding, stops acknowledging your existence. You start to wonder if it's something about you, something you're doing. Are you too much? Not enough. You can't say anything, because the moment you try, they pull further away. The silence becomes a game. But you're not playing. You're losing. The most insidious part of this manipulation is that it doesn't just affect you on the outside. It seeps into your mind, into your very sense of self-worth. You stop questioning the other person's actions and start questioning yourself. The more you internalize this treatment, the more it becomes a cycle. You stop reaching out for fear of making it worse. You stop speaking up because you fear the silence more than the confrontation. And one day, you don't even try anymore. You've accepted that silence as a form of love, as if it's the price you must pay for peace. But here's the thing. The silent treatment is a form of control. It's manipulation that hides behind the mask of giving someone space or being upset. It wears the disguise of a cooling-off period, but its true goal is to break you down, to make you feel small, to make you feel unworthy. It's a way for someone to bend your emotions to their will without ever lifting a finger. It's the quietest, most insidious form of emotional abuse. Think about it. We're taught that silence means peace, that it's something good. But in the hands of the wrong person, silence becomes a weapon. It's a tool for power, for dominance, for breaking down someone's sense of self. And it works because we let it. We think that maybe, just maybe, if we're silent enough, if we shrink enough, they'll come back, they'll see us, they'll love us again. But what if you don't have to endure it? What if you could recognize the manipulation before it gets under your skin? The moment the silence starts, don't let it consume you. Speak up. Don't give in to the guilt. Don't shrink. Don't believe that silence equals love. It doesn't. Silence is a weapon, but it's also a choice. And you don't have to accept it. You are worthy of being seen. You are worthy of being heard. Don't let the quiet take away your voice. The next time someone tries to control you with their silence, take a deep breath, stand tall, and break the silence yourself. You have the power to speak. You have the power to be seen. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let the silence define you. Victim playing. You've been here before, haven't you? That moment when someone starts playing the victim, and suddenly everything shifts. The rules change, the dynamics twist, and somehow you find yourself questioning your own reality. But here's the unsettling truth. Playing the victim is one of the most dangerous games we can unknowingly engage in. It's not just manipulation. It's a form of control, a silent weapon that doesn't need force or even a raised voice. The victim isn't just seeking sympathy. No, they're claiming power, disguising weakness as strength. And you, yes, you, are their unwitting accomplice. The victim knows how to make you feel guilty. They draw on your compassion, your empathy, your very sense of justice. They've perfected the art of storytelling, weaving narratives where they're always the one wronged, the one misunderstood. And in the process, they don't just tell a story. They craft a world where you owe them, a world where you must make it right. At first, it's subtle. They never come out and demand anything. They don't have to. They make you feel that something is owed, that something is broken, and somehow it's because of you. They twist facts, bend the truth, and leave you tangled in your own emotions, desperately searching for a way to make it better. They cry, they frown, they give just enough to make you think, this isn't fair, this shouldn't be happening. But the true horror lies in the escalation. The victim doesn't just stop at playing the helpless one. Oh no, that would be too easy. They gradually become the sole person in the room who matters. You bend over backward, trying to fix things for them, while they continue to feed off your guilt, your attention, your willingness to help. The more you give, the more they take. And the more they take, the less you recognize the person you once were. There's a haunting familiarity to this pattern. It's not new. In fact, it's ancient. History is full of examples where those who mastered the art of victimhood manipulated entire populations. Think of the cult leaders who convinced people to follow them blindly, to give up everything for the sake of the cause, because they were victims of a cruel world. Think of the politicians who framed themselves as martyrs, champions of the downtrodden, all while wielding more power than anyone ever knew. And then there are the personal relationships, the ones we all know so well, where the victim plays their role so well, you can't help but wonder if you're the one in the wrong. You've seen it happen, haven't you? The friend who makes every conversation about their hardship, the lover who turns every disagreement into a personal attack, the co-worker who always has an excuse for their failures, never owning up to their actions, always blaming the system, the world, or you. And you? Well, you start to question yourself. You start to wonder if you're too harsh, too demanding, too unfeeling. And that's where the real danger lies, because once they've got you questioning your own reality, the game is almost over. They've won. They've turned the table. They've made you the villain in your own story, and all they have to do is sit back and watch the destruction unfold. The most insidious part of playing the victim, though, is that the victim often doesn't know they're playing. They genuinely believe they are the wronged party. They don't see the manipulation, the subtle twisting of facts. They don't recognize that their behavior is a desperate attempt to control, to mold their surroundings to fit their narrative. And why would they? After all, in a world where power is often hidden in plain sight, what better disguise than to claim that you're the one being oppressed? The horrifying reality is that anyone can fall into the trap. Anyone can start to play the victim, even unknowingly. You can find yourself justifying your mistakes by blaming circumstances, blaming others, blaming the world. You can start to seek attention, sympathy, validation, all while believing you're simply looking for understanding. But somewhere along the way, you lose sight of the truth. You forget the lines between seeking help and seeking control. So here's the question we must all ask ourselves. How do we break free from this cycle? How do we stop from becoming the unwitting player in someone else's game? It starts with self-awareness. It starts with recognizing when you're being manipulated, when your emotions are being used as tools. It starts with acknowledging that sometimes it's not about fixing someone else's world, it's about protecting your own. But here's the chilling thought. Once the victim has wrapped you in their web, once they've established their power over you, how do you escape? The game is rigged, the stakes are too high, and the consequences of stepping away might be more than you're willing to bear. So the next time you find yourself caught in the web of a victim, ask yourself, who is really being hurt here? And more importantly, who is truly in control? Because the truth is, the moment you stop asking that question, you've already lost. Anchoring negative emotions. What if every emotion you felt was a direct result of something someone said or did to you? What if your happiness, your anger, your anxiety could be traced back to one small moment, one insignificant interaction? It's unsettling, isn't it? To think that the weight of your entire emotional life could hinge on a single anchor. And yet, that's how it works. We don't realize it, but we're all bound by invisible chains, set by the smallest of remarks, the most subtle gestures. Someone calls you lazy when you've been trying your hardest. Someone dismisses your feelings, saying you're overreacting. Over time, those words, those moments, become the anchors that pull you down, even when you think you've moved on. It's like a dark, quiet shadow following you, unseen, but ever present. Now imagine this. You're in a conversation, and out of nowhere you feel it, that pit in your stomach, the tightening in your chest. Why? because your mind has anchored that exact feeling to something someone said to you years ago. The brain does this without you even realizing it. It locks away emotions, linking them to specific triggers, a face, a word, a place. And every time you encounter that trigger, the emotion floods back, as intense as it was the first time. It's like a loop, one that keeps you trapped in the past. But why? Why does the brain hold on to these negative anchors? Why does it keep dredging up these emotional weights? The answer is simple: survival. The brain wants to protect you. It's trying to warn you, keep you from feeling hurt again. But in doing so, it locks you in a cycle of emotional baggage. And that's when things start to spiral. You start seeing the world through a distorted lens, colored by past pain, even when the present is free of it. It's easy to ignore at first. A passing comment doesn't seem like much. A short argument doesn't seem to matter. But then one day, it hits you. You're angry, but you don't know why. You feel anxious, but you don't understand the source. You're carrying the weight of things that were never yours to begin with. You've anchored yourself to emotions that belong to someone else's perception of you, and now they're controlling your life. But it doesn't stop there. This isn't just about isolated moments. This pattern spills over into your relationships, your work, your entire worldview. It affects the way you react to new situations, to new people. It influences how you perceive yourself. You start to doubt your worth, question your abilities, because somewhere along the way, someone anchored those doubts in your mind. And so, the question becomes, what happens when you realize you've been living in this emotional prison? What happens when you recognize that all these negative feelings aren't truly yours, but echoes from the past? It's a haunting realization, because once you see it, you can never unsee it. You can't go back to being the person you were before that anchor was set. You can't pretend that the weight isn't there. But here's the thing. Once you recognize the anchor, you have the power to break it. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. You don't have to let someone else's words define you, but that's the hard part, isn't it? Recognizing that the anchor was never yours to begin with. And so you have to ask yourself, how much longer will you let these emotional chains control you? When will you take the first step to free yourself? Because the truth is, the only person who can pull the anchor free is you. But once it's gone, you'll feel a weight you didn't know you were carrying, lifting. And for the first time in a long time, you'll breathe a little easier. Feigning ignorance. Imagine this. You're sitting in a meeting, and someone says something undeniably wrong. Everyone else in the room is either too polite or too scared to speak up. But then someone else, quietly, almost apologetically, asks the very question you were about to ask. They pretend they didn't understand, like they missed the memo. But here's the twist. It's no accident. They know exactly what they're doing. They feign ignorance, and it works every time. Feigning ignorance is a powerful tactic that many use, often without anyone realizing it. It's the art of pretending you don't know something, even when you do. It sounds harmless, maybe even a little charming. But behind that innocent act lies a strategy that can manipulate people, avoid responsibility, and shift the power balance in their favor. And it's more common than you might think. Consider the infamous case of the Watergate scandal. In the 1970s, high-ranking officials feigned ignorance when asked about the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. They claimed they didn't know anything, despite the fact that their roles in the cover-up were clear. And it worked. They bought time, evaded the immediate consequences, and kept their hands clean, at least for a while. It was a classic case of feigning ignorance on a massive scale. So how does this work? First, there's the initial act, the purposeful avoidance of knowledge. A person might pretend they didn't hear, didn't understand, or simply don't know. At first glance, it seems innocent. After all, everyone has moments of confusion or forgetfulness, right? But then comes step 2, the deliberate delay. When asked about something they should know, they stall. They ask for clarification. They express confusion. It's a strategic move to shift focus away from their own actions or complicity. Next comes step 3, the power play. In pretending not to know, the individual positions themselves as an outsider, someone who isn't involved, someone who can't be blamed for the problem. They place themselves in a position where they can't be held accountable for decisions, mistakes, or actions. It's a subtle way of shifting the spotlight onto someone else, making the problem everyone else's, but never their own. They remain untouched. Why does this work so effectively? Because of a little thing called cognitive bias. People want to believe the best in others. It's easier to assume someone is genuinely confused or uninformed than to suspect they're playing a game. We tend to give others the benefit of the doubt, especially when they appear humble or vulnerable. The person feigning ignorance knows this. They play into our natural tendency to trust, to offer empathy, and to avoid confrontation. They play the fool to make us feel better about not questioning their motives. The frightening truth? Feigning ignorance is often so subtle that the victims don't even see it coming. They get swept up in the moment, in the seeming sincerity of the person who's pretending not to know. They assume that because the person is asking questions or looking confused, they're harmless. But beneath the surface, it's a calculated tactic. The longer they can keep this up, the more they avoid responsibility, the more power they gain. So what can you do to protect yourself from this manipulation? First, pay close attention. When someone is pretending to be clueless, ask yourself, why? What are they avoiding? What are they trying to distract from? Second, don't be afraid to call it out. If someone keeps pretending they don't understand, challenge them. Sometimes simply pointing out the obvious can disrupt the act. Finally, trust your instincts. If something feels off, if someone is trying to slide by without taking accountability, question their motives. Don't let them get away with it. Feigning ignorance isn't just a trick, it's a game. And in this game, the stakes are high. But once you see it for what it truly is, a deliberate tactic to manipulate and evade responsibility, you'll be less likely to fall for it. Knowledge is power, and once you recognize the signs of feigned ignorance, you'll be in a better position to reclaim control. Comparative devaluation. Imagine this. You're at the peak of your career. Everything is aligning perfectly, until out of nowhere, someone close to you, a mentor, or perhaps even a partner, begins subtly undermining your accomplishments. At first it's small, a remark about how lucky you are to have gotten that promotion, or how anyone could have done it with a bit of hard work. Then it escalates. Your successes become dismissed as insignificant, even when they've cost you years of struggle. But it doesn't end there. What once felt like validation starts to feel like a slow drain of your confidence. This isn't just about hurt feelings. This is something darker, a psychological trap known as comparative devaluation. At its core, Comparative devaluation is a strategy, often covert, where someone systematically diminishes your worth by pitting you against others, or worse, by making you question your own achievements. It's a form of psychological manipulation, often employed by those who want to control or destabilize your sense of self. It's a tactic that distorts your self-perception, making you feel inferior even in the face of accomplishments that should fill you with pride. How does it work? It begins with the small, almost imperceptible shifts in how your achievements are framed. You might get praised for something, but the praise is always followed by a comparison to someone else. You're doing well, but if you look at how Susan did it, she managed to get there faster, or I know you're proud of your promotion, but you do realize Tom got a higher position in half the time, right? These remarks might seem harmless on the surface, just casual observations. But what's happening here is much more insidious. Each comparison makes you feel like you're falling short. Your success, your hard work, suddenly becomes less than, because it's now measured against someone else's. The key here is the gradual nature of the process, small enough not to raise alarms, but powerful enough to erode your sense of worth. The psychological mechanism behind comparative devaluation taps into some of the deepest parts of your brain. It plays on the human tendency to seek validation and approval, wiring us to compare ourselves to others. But what's truly dangerous here is how it exploits our brain's wiring for competition and social ranking. When someone praises you, but follows it up with a comparison to someone else, they are triggering a response in your brain related to self-worth. Dopamine, the feel-good chemical, becomes linked with external validation, which in turn makes you more susceptible to their influence. Over time, you begin to internalize the comparisons, believing that you are constantly falling short, even if the metrics of success aren't truly within your control. Real-life examples of comparative devaluation are all around us, particularly in toxic relationships or environments. In the workplace, an employee might be constantly undermined by a superior who dismisses their hard work by highlighting others who supposedly achieve more. A partner might do the same, constantly comparing you to their ex or someone from their past, making you feel less competent or lovable. It's not just a one-time comment. It's the repeated implication that you are never quite enough, no matter how much you try. Eventually, this leads to a warped sense of self, where you find yourself constantly striving to prove your worth, often at the expense of your mental health and well-being. But here's the twist. The trap doesn't snap until it's too late. At first, you might brush off these comments, thinking they're just harmless feedback. However, as the devaluation continues, you start questioning your achievements. Am I really that great? You ask yourself. The proud moments that once defined your success now seem trivial in comparison to the inflated successes of others. You start to doubt your abilities, your value, and even your worthiness of love or recognition. What began as a few words of comparison now becomes an internal monologue, where you no longer see your own worth. It's been overshadowed by the ever-present, invisible measure of others. This cycle is incredibly powerful because it taps into our inherent desire to belong, to be seen as successful in the eyes of others. Our brains are wired to look for social cues and comparisons, but in toxic dynamics, these comparisons are weaponized. The manipulator's goal is subtle yet effective, to make you feel inferior, so you become dependent on their validation. The more you doubt yourself, the more you turn to them for reassurance. But that reassurance will always come at a cost: your self-esteem, your independence, and your sense of identity. The key to breaking free from comparative devaluation is recognizing it for what it is. The moment you realize that your worth is being measured against others in a way that undermines you, you've taken the first step. Your achievements, your qualities, and your value are not defined by the success of others. They are uniquely yours, and no comparison can diminish that. In the end, comparative devaluation is a psychological game played by those who want to maintain control. It's subtle, it's insidious, and it's designed to leave you questioning your own reality. But when you start to reclaim your self-worth, free from the need for comparison, you take back the power that was never truly theirs to begin with. Selective memory manipulation. There's a way to make you question your own mind without ever touching it. A way to distort your reality so subtly that you don't even notice until it's too late. Selective memory manipulation is a silent thief, sneaking into your thoughts, rearranging them, and making you doubt what you thought you knew. It's not about changing the facts. It's about making you forget the ones that don't fit. You think you're in control of your memories. You're not. Not when someone knows how to manipulate them. It starts small. The seed is planted with a simple question. Are you sure that's how it happened? Just like that, the certainty you had in your own recollection begins to crack. You replay the memory in your mind, but something feels off. The details blur, the emotions fade. You start to wonder. Maybe I was wrong. This isn't a random occurrence. This is a deliberate action. Someone is rewriting your perception of the past, making you doubt what you saw, heard, or felt. It could be a parent, a partner, a friend, someone you trust, and they know exactly how to press your buttons. They might say things like, "I never said that," or "You must have misunderstood," or even, "You're just overreacting." Slowly you begin to wonder, am I really the one who's confused? Is it possible I remembered it wrong? But here's the thing. Your mind starts to bend to their narrative. Little by little, the facts that once seemed so clear slip into a haze. You start rethinking moments, big ones, small ones. And what's worse, you begin to doubt your own instincts, your own emotions. It's like walking through fog. The world is still there, but you can't see it clearly anymore. Imagine this. You're in a relationship. A disagreement happens. You remember it vividly. Words exchanged, feelings hurt. But then they tell you, that's not what happened. At first you argue, but they're relentless, offering their version over and over, until you start asking yourself, did I make it all up? They didn't even raise their voice, but every word felt like a needle poking holes in your confidence. It starts with little things. A memory shifted, an event reframed. But soon, it spreads. You begin doubting all your memories, not just the ones they've manipulated. Your own mind becomes a battlefield. The truth becomes unclear. The past becomes a fog. And that's when the real danger sets in. This isn't just about confusion. It's about control. By manipulating your memories, they're controlling how you see yourself. The more they distort, the more you internalize the doubt. You stop trusting your own judgment. You start living in their version of the truth. And if this goes unchecked, it becomes toxic. A partner, a friend, even a colleague can use selective memory manipulation to keep you off balance. It's like a slow burn, quietly destroying your sense of reality. You begin to feel like you're always wrong, always questioning yourself, and that constant doubt starts to erode your confidence. It's insidious. It creeps into your soul. So what do? How do you fight this silent manipulation? You start by recognizing it. The moment you feel that doubt creeping in, ask yourself, is this my memory? Or is this someone else's version of it? Start questioning the narrative being forced on you. Write it down. Take a step back. Talk to others. Seek clarity outside the manipulation. Don't let them rewrite your story. Your memories are your truth. Don't let anyone take that from you. Trust in what you know, even when they try to make you doubt it. It's time to take back control of your mind and the narrative of your life. Because if you don't, they'll make you forget who you are. Ambiguity. Control. What if I told you that the most dangerous force in the world isn't violence, isn't greed, but something far more insidious, the power of ambiguity? We've all encountered it, in conversations, in decisions, in the moments when we're unsure of what's really going on. It's the space between clarity and confusion, where truths slip through the cracks and what we think we know begins to unravel. And yet, it's in this grey area that control is quietly, silently exerted. Ambiguity is the ultimate weapon, not because it's obvious, but because it's invisible. It's the fog that clouds our perception, leaving us in a constant state of questioning. The mind, always seeking answers, doesn't rest until it finds certainty. But ambiguity, it thrives in our discomfort. It holds us in suspense, allowing others to pull the strings without us even realizing. When everything is unclear, when every word is open to interpretation, we surrender our power to those who manipulate it. You see, ambiguity isn't merely about leaving things unsaid. It's about the art of suggestion. It's about leaving gaps in information, framing the narrative in such a way that the conclusion is no longer something we arrive at ourselves, but something we're guided toward. And when we're uncertain, when we don't know what to trust, we look to the one who seems the most confident. Confidence becomes the mask behind which ambiguity hides. And so we follow. It starts small, doesn't it? A conversation where you don't quite catch everything, but you don't question it because, well, maybe it's your fault. Or the boss who gives you vague instructions, just enough to make you think you understand, but never enough to actually get it right. And there, in those moments of confusion, control is established. The more uncertain you are, the more susceptible you become. They don't need to tell you what to do. They just need to make you doubt what you already know. Think about history, how leaders have mastered the use of ambiguity. Take propaganda, for example, in times of war. Governments, in their infinite wisdom, craft messages that are vague but stirring. They don't give clear facts, but they stir emotions. They make you feel things, fear, pride, anger, without ever asking you to question why. They blur the lines between truth and lie so that, in the end, it doesn't matter which one you choose to believe. The result is always the same: compliance. When you're uncertain about the truth, you stop searching for it. You stop questioning. You let someone else do the thinking for you. And that's how power is seized. In everyday life, ambiguity is a tool used to manage relationships, negotiations, and even self-perception. Think of the friend who never quite commits to plans, never gives a firm answer, yet somehow always gets their way. Or the partner who says maybe when asked for something important, leaving you in a constant state of waiting, wondering if you misunderstood or if they simply don't care. It's a dance of confusion, a subtle power struggle in which both parties are never quite on the same page, but one emerges with the upper hand, simply by keeping the other in the dark. The most dangerous part of ambiguity is its ability to shape our reality without us ever noticing. It's how people can manipulate others through doubt, through misinformation, through the deliberate use of vagueness. It's how leaders can keep entire populations in a state of uncertainty, so they never question the path laid out for them. They don't need to tell you the truth. They just need to control what you believe is true. What's more terrifying is that we don't always see it coming. We think we're in control, that we can decipher the truth, but when we're faced with ambiguity, we hesitate. We hesitate because the unknown is more uncomfortable than the known, no matter how flawed. Ambiguity makes us question our own judgments. It erodes our confidence. And once our trust in ourselves falters, we become easy targets for those who would shape our reality to suit their needs. This is the chilling truth. Ambiguity doesn't just obscure the truth. It becomes the truth. It's the fog that turns everything into a reflection of our own fears and desires. And when we can no longer discern what is real, we are left to navigate a world of half-truths and assumptions. Our decisions, our relationships, even our identities become warped. We are no longer the masters of our own lives. The real power lies in the ones who understand that control doesn't come from providing answers. It comes from keeping the questions alive. And so, we are left in the shadows, grasping for clarity that may never come. Because in the end, the more we seek the truth, the more we become entangled in the web of ambiguity. It is not something that can be easily escaped. It is the force that silently shapes our world, and it has been quietly controlling us all along.